It's a Tuesday, and you know what that means, folks. It's the MLS Power Rankings show for Week 4. Andrew Wiebe, Matt Doyle here every single Tuesday to break down the best teams in Major League Soccer. Usually we do the top 10. It's been fun doing the top 10, Doyle. It's gotten a little bit stagnant over the first couple of weeks because we're talking about mostly the same teams, and we know that there are some teams that over the course of a season we just might never get to. So this week we made the executive decision to do the reverse top 10. Live here on Twitter Spaces at 2 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. And of course, you can listen on demand on the MLS Today podcast feed. Wherever you listen to podcasts, just search MLS Today. You'll get the Power Rankings show. You'll get MLS Today every single day, which is also live at 11 a.m. Eastern on Twitter Spaces with David Goss. You will also get MLS After Dark on Saturdays and Sundays. So if you need something in between listening to Extra Time and the call up, if you are working out every day, good for you, but you need that little bit of extra entertainment while you do so, we've got content for you at all times on the MLS Today thread, as well as Extra Time and the Call Up. Please subscribe to all of those. And also keep in mind that World Cup qualifying is going down this week in CONCACAF and around the world. We'll have watch-along shows on YouTube Live during all those games. So on Thursday, when the U.S. is at Azteca, when Canada is playing in Costa Rica, YouTube Live with DeMarcus Beasley, myself, Doyle, Kalen, and I believe maybe Dave. I'm spacing on who all's on there. But we'll watch the game live, basically have a therapy session over video as we find out what's going to happen at Azteca and across the region. Without any further ado, let's give you your top 10 of these power rankings. Philadelphia, number 1. Seattle, number 2. New York City, number 3, dropping 2 spots after that loss following CCL. LAFC up 2 spots, top of the West right now for them. RSL there too. And to the top, bottom 10 we go. Miami, San Jose, Vancouver, Houston, Charlotte, Cincinnati, DC, Toronto, Kansas City, and Montreal bringing us through there. We have great guests, and we'll start with Inter Miami and Alex Windley. If you don't follow Alex, AAW_1998 on Twitter, go check it out. She's the host of the Heron Outlet. She covers Inter Miami for 5 Reasons Sports. She has been a huge resource for me in staying up to date with this team. And so far, Alex, things are not going well. When you lose in Cincinnati, when you're bottom of the table, there's the other shoe has dropped, so to speak, in modern MLS. What's going on in Miami right now?
Yeah, hey guys. Right now it's honestly a bit of a mess in South Florida. I know, the club, despite the sanctions, they did want to sort of be competitive, but right now it's not looking that way, and alarm bells are starting to ring out, and questions are being thrown at not only Gonzalo but also Phil Neville at this point. Yeah, like you said about FC Cincinnati, yeah, it was a kudos to Cincinnati. They played actually pretty well. Miami they just couldn't get it together, and heading into their next upcoming games, I think it's kind of do or die for Neville at this point. So everything that has gone wrong has gone wrong. So at this point, it's up to them to sort of dig themselves out of this hole at this point.
When you say do or die for Phil Neville, do you feel like he's coaching for his job these next 3 games?
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. I know people are going to say, "Oh, talk to me in August," but genuinely, he came into the season saying this is his squad. These are the players that he brought in, and right now they're not playing like a cohesive squad. And I know they did get rid of a bunch of players, but at the same time, there are some quality players on this squad. Robert Taylor, Finland international. Leo Campana, does well with Ecuador. There are a bunch of players on the squad that have the ability to play well, but they're not even playing at that level at this point. So right now it's looking at their schedule through April, I think there's Atlanta away, Seattle. Some of these teams are not gonna be kind to Inter Miami. So I definitely do think that right now for Neville, yeah, his job is on the line, and it's just gonna get more difficult as it continues.
Hold
on a second, Wiebe. Let me ask this, because I think we can all agree he hasn't done a great job, but it's also been really, really quick. Like we're a month into the season. Everybody knew this was a massive teardown and rebuild. I don't think there's been anything like this in MLS history. Is it too soon for his job to be on the line?
I think with the expectations, I think it's the ownership that, despite the sanctions, they do want to do well. And, these 4 games, Miami, they've not looked even remotely competitive. I think that's the biggest issue. I know. I guess it would be a bit different if they were, taking it to some of these teams, maybe losing 1-0, showing some fight. But you see against Austin FC, they completely folded. FC Cincinnati, they did completely collapse nearly. So I think yes, it takes time, but this fan base and they don't have a lot of patience. Honestly, the club has gone through a lot, so I do expect just for it to get worse. Honestly, and yes, there is some patience, but at the same time, the ownership did expect them to be a little bit more competitive than this.
What is happening with Gonzalo Higuain, Alex?
Yeah, that's the big question. I do think there's a bit of miscommunication. I know that there was this quote floating around from Phil Neville saying that Gonzalo's role hasn't changed. We need him to do better. But at the same time, his role has changed, even though Neville says it hasn't. Gonzalo has definitely been more of a creator for this Miami team. He's only had like what 2 shots through what 3 games, 4 games this season. So Gonzalo has definitely took it upon himself to become a creator, despite Neville wanting him to score more, but that's not happened. So right now there's just some miscommunication there, and I think that adds on to this broader narrative about Miami about how they're just not getting it together, and Neville said this is his squad, but it's just not clicking. Honestly, it's just not clicking at the moment.
What's the path forward for Phil Neville for this team? Like how do you pick up the pieces here in what was already going to be an extremely difficult season given the changes they made and the sanctions you mentioned?
I think it's going back to basics. I know listening to DeAndre Yedlin in some of these post-match conferences, he's talking about, guys just learning how to pass better, which is crazy. And these guys are professional soccer players. They should be able to do that. But I think, coaching has, I don't want to blame Phil Neville for everything, but coaching does have a lot to do with that, just getting the guys to the right spots, progressive passing patterns, all that stuff. Watching Inter Miami, they don't necessarily do all that stuff, and they do miss the basic passes. They don't really look for the open teammate. So, I'll go off of Phil Neville's words here. They just kind of gotta buckle down and try to dig themselves out of this. Will it happen? I don't know. No one knows, but they certainly need to try if they're trying to salvage anything from these first couple of games.
Last thing here, Alex, and I suggest everybody go follow Alex. Her coverage has really kept me on the cutting edge of what's going on in Miami. Give me a positive. Give me one positive. Just something.
I will say the young guns. Inter Miami has they have a lot of really cool upcoming talents in Edison Ascona, Noah Allen. They're super players. They don't get a lot of playing time, unfortunately. But from what I've covered from Fort Lauderdale, now known as Inter Miami 2, last season, they're really good players, and they have a really high upside. And the academy, they're Inter Miami 2 play in a couple of days, and I'm looking forward to watching that. There's a lot of good young talent coming through the pipeline. I know Miami and people wanted the DPs and whatnot, but I find it more interesting talking about the younger talent coming up through the ranks, and certainly this season we will definitely see them play a bit more, just due to the circumstances. So that's the one positive I would take away.
Hey, building blocks for the future, huh?
Yeah.
All right, go check out Alex. Does great work for the Heron Outlet as well as 5 Reasons Sports. Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on. It was a blast.
Of course. Let's keep it rolling to number 27. It would normally be number 9 in these power rankings, but the reverse power rankings rule, and that's San Jose. Alex Morgan here, Quakes Talk on Twitter, Quakes Epicenter. You can listen to him as well on the Aftershock. Does a ton of great content around the Quakes, and it's tough times, Alex, right now for San Jose. I tweeted this out: last in expected goals, both scored and conceded. What's going on?
Yeah, there's a lot that's wrong with the Quakes right now, and the problem is that they have a good roster. I think that a lot of the things that have been happening behind the scenes with Chris Leach's new recruitment strategy, bringing in guys like Jamiro Montero, Jan Gregush, Francisco Calvo, has given San Jose fans a lot of optimism, but it's just not translating on the field. And I think the blame for that rests squarely on the shoulders of Matias Almeida. because this is his 4th season in charge in San Jose, and yet the team still looks just completely and utterly lost on the field. They don't really have a coherent attacking strategy, despite having all of these creative attacking players. They just don't have a system by which to get the ball up the field and score goals. And then they're also just really vulnerable at the back. Matias Almeida has been toying around with a 3 at the back system with Jackson Ewell and Eric Remedi in that center defensive role. And neither of those players, I think, have the defensive awareness, the aerial skills, and the leadership to really lead the line back there. And that's why we're seeing so many of these issues on the field.
Alex, the defensive issues don't surprise me, frankly, based upon what we've seen for the past 3 years from the Quakes and man marking. And it's just, there's so much film on it. Everybody knows how to attack this back line, especially if you have guys who aren't defenders back there. But what has happened to the attack? Because the first 2.5 years that Almeida was in charge, this attack was fun. It was open. They were getting their fullbacks forward, combining with the wingers. They had chalk on the boots wingers on both sides. They were putting in a ton of crosses. Now, that's not, in my book, that's not the best way to build a highly functional attack, but it was actually working for the Quakes. And you would think that with Jeremy Abobasi now leading the line, and he's dominant in the air, you would think they would have doubled down on that, but they're crossing the ball less. They're playing with fullbacks who don't get as high and don't get as involved. The wingers are coming inside more. What is the rationale behind any of this?
I think that's what we've been trying to figure out here in San Jose for the last couple of weeks. It just feels like Almeida is making things way too complicated. He's trying to fit all of these players on the field at the same time. He's trying to fit Montero. He's trying to fit Showfeast. He's trying to fit Grey Goose. He's trying to fit Remedi. He's trying to fit all these guys on the field on the same time and get all the best players in the lineup without really paying attention to how they're actually going to score goals. And the thing about the team in 2019 and 2020, when they were fun in the attack, is that they had a really clear game plan, which was to get the ball wide to Christian Espinosa and to take advantage of their pace on the wings and then put in, cutbacks and crosses to Chris Wondolowski up top. And that's how they scored goals. But they really just don't have a discernible game plan right now. It feels like they're just relying on some individual brilliance from guys like Chofis. And the one way they have put balls in the back of the net is through set pieces. They do have some talent in the air. Francisco Calvo scored 2 headers in their draw against the Columbus Crew earlier. But in terms of, open play, they're just really not creating anything. They haven't scored a single goal from open play so far. And they didn't have a single shot on target against Minnesota last week. Almeida is just making things way too complicated when I think it's pretty clear that this team succeeds the most in a 4-2-3-1 formation and getting the ball wide and taking advantage of the pace they have on the wings.
What does Mateus say about all this?
In his press conference after the game against Minnesota, he seemed to acknowledge a lot of the struggles that they're going through right now and acknowledge the fact that they don't really have a game plan that works. But I mean, this is his 4th year in charge, so there's not really much that's left to be said, I don't think. It feels like the Quakes are in purgatory right now, and it feels very much like he's a lame duck coach, because it's clear that in the front office, Chris Leach and the front office staff are kind of moving on with longer term plans, and increasingly it just seems like he's not a part of that, and there's not much left to say really for him.
What does, in your mind, and maybe in the Quakes fan base mind, the future of this club look like outside of, let's just say, this year? Because I believe this is the last year of his contract. Let's just say, for the sake of discussion here, that Mateus Almeida does not come back as Quakes head coach. And look, that probably would not surprise anybody at this point, and probably I don't even need to use, I would think. What does it look like in the future? Like, what can this club aspire to and be with Leach and a new manager, whoever that might be, at the helm?
Well, the club has a lot of young players who are super exciting. Cade Cowell was obviously the guy that everybody was talking about last season. But you also have guys like Marcos Lopez, who right now is playing for the Peruvian national team and has succeeded in that national team setup. You also have guys like Benji Kikanovic, who looked really good last season, Tanner Beeson, Jackson Ewell. So you have a lot of young players. JT Marcinkowski in goal is another one, who a lot of the fans are excited about. And I think those are the guys that Chris Leach is trying to build around. And then the thing that he's done to really revamp their recruiting strategy is to focus on domestic intra-league transfers and utilizing all of the roster mechanisms in MLS to get some steals and find these sort of inefficiencies in the transfer market and take advantage of them. Because the Quakes aren't a team that has historically gone out and bought a lot of flashy signings, but I think the front office and Almeida has talked about how they're looking at organizations like the Philadelphia Union as models for how they can build a team that's built around a lot of the young talent and become a selling club, one of the clubs that sells players to Europe. And I honestly think that they're building a good structure behind the scenes and that they're setting themselves up for success in 2-3 years, but it's kind of just waiting for that to manifest at this point. And this season increasingly is looking at like a bit of a lost cause.
Right now, in these power rankings, 27th, San Jose. They've got the single draw against Columbus, same as Miami, who had the single draw. Go check out the Aftershock after Quakes games. If you're a Quakes fan or you just played against them, you guys do great work. And follow Alex Morgan right here, Quakes_talk. We appreciate your time, Alex. Yeah, it's crazy here. I just realized, looking at the rundown.
3 straight Alexes.
As we go to 26, we have 3 straight Alexes. We have Alex Windley, Alex Morgan, and Alexandre. And I'm bringing you in, man, because I don't want to butcher your last name, but I've followed your Quakes in Canada coverage for years now. Jump in, Alexandre. Let's talk a little bit of Vancouver Whitecaps, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Hopefully I can live up to the other Alexes. They were great, but I'm excited to come on, even though the Caps aren't so exciting these days, although they were last year, and it's a hope they can get back to that last year form, but so far not the greatest start.
Alex, we're going to start you. No, we're going to start you with a very easy question so we can get you with a win out the gates. How do you pronounce your last name? Just so we can get it right.
Yeah, for sure. It's Alex Gonge Ruzik is that's how I pronounce it. It's pretty sometimes you get a mixed bag. Some people you get a complete butchering, some people get it bang on. It's pretty 50-50 from what I've seen.
I feel like Wiebe and I were smart not to try it.
Yeah, as a known Wiebe, as a web, as a many things, the different telemarketers over the years, I did not want to take a chance on that. But I want to say that's how I would have gone had I gone there. Alexander, what happened, man? Vinny Sartini and this team on Dynamo last year, the run that they had, it was inspirational. And it is going to be hard to keep that energy going and those results going, and it has been difficult. Why? Oh, you're on mute, my guy.
All right, there you go. I think I cut out there for a second, but I caught the first part of the question. I mean, it's just getting real right now for the Vancouver Whitecaps. Last year, it was kind of they're on a cloud when Vanni Sartini came in. Obviously they were saying right from the beginning, oh, let's make the playoffs. It was hard to believe that they were actually going to go out and then make the playoffs. So it was kind of like, the stereotypical, you're playing with house money. Now it's a full season, first full season. You've had a full off season where you didn't make that many moves. And they've just been thrown a tough hand out of the start. They got, the 2020 champs on week 1 away. You come home, you play the 2021 champs, and then you go on road to Houston, which, yes, maybe on paper that's a game they thought they could have won. It's still always a place they've struggled in. And then you finish it with a visit to LAFC, somewhere where they've also never won. It's really just been a murderer's row of games for them. And then along with injuries, it's all just kind of created this perfect storm, but in the opposite sense, whereas last year everything was lining up for them. Right now it feels like they can't catch a break.
Tell us about those injuries. What is the timeline like on Brian White, on Kyle Alexandre, and Ryan Gauld now missed this past week, and it turns out he'd been playing the first couple of games with some sort of hip injury or quad injury, maybe, which maybe accounted for him looking nothing like what he looked like in 2021.
Yeah, for sure. I think Gold and White, good news for the Whitecaps, given how important they were last year. They looked to be on a better path. They were kind of kept out of this LAFC game for more of a precautionary reason. It looks like, international break should see them healthy to at least be in the squad in the Whitecaps' next game against SKC, if not starting. Otherwise, Kyle Alessandre, it's just a little more long-term. I think, they've been continually saying his fitness, he needs to get back up to full fitness. Personally, it just looks like, I don't know if his foot has been fully healed yet, and they really don't want to rush him, which I don't blame them. He's a key asset for them. You don't want to have him come back early and then re-injure it. So I think for him, it looks like it could be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, even closer to 6 weeks. And then the last one who we don't mention, just because it feels like he's perennially injured, is Eric Godoy. I mean, the Whitecaps would love to have a guy like him at the back. He's been super whenever he's been healthy, but there's just every few weeks it's a calf, it's a groin, it's something. And right now it's the calf that bothered him at the beginning of 2020. And he looked great in preseason, and it looked like he was finally going to start the year healthy, and then he hit a setback, and it looks like it could be also longer term, like Kyle.
What do you think of the like short, medium, and long term future of Lucas Cavallini with this club? Like, how would you evaluate his DP signing, and what decisions might be made around his status with the team in the next year or so?
I mean, that's the $5 million question. I think the thing is right now with the Whitecaps, I think after last year, had he not been a DP and, had he not come off a season like he had, I'm sure they would have loved to move him on based on how Brian White was playing. You kind of got a perfect fit there for a much cheaper price, but you don't want to sell a $5 million player for $1 million, $2 million. So they kept him around, and honestly, it's good that they did, with Brian White suffering some injuries to start the year. And the thing is, Cavallini's looked great. I think that's great if you're the Whitecaps, because, at the bare minimum, if White comes back and it ends up looking like last year where White takes over, at least you can, show potential teams that, hey, look, Cava is in good form. He could be an asset worth purchasing. If not, you can keep Cavallini around and play him with White maybe, or play them off each other. The one thing that has helped is Cavallini is super motivated this year, World Cup year. I think he's realizing that his form needs to be better if he wants to make the Canadian squad, just based on how intense things are starting to get up front. So he's come out of the gate super strong. So with the Whitecaps, that gives them options. Will they play him and White together? I'm sure they want to try it and see how it goes, and then maybe make a decision in the summer. But at the very least, based on how he's playing, at least there's going to be more of a market for him in the summer if they decide it's time to move on.
It's been good to give everybody an opportunity to say something positive to conclude this segment. I'm going to try to, we're going to have a mixed bag here. My expectations for Vancouver were that they would be in playoff contention. Not they'd be a guaranteed playoff team, but they would at least be there, and 50% shot, you jump in there. Have the expectations changed, or is expectations still that they are playoff capable and adjacent?
I think it's, for now, the expectations remain the same. I think a lot of people looking at the Whitecaps specifically, and then also the rest of the Western Conference picture, I think most people had the Whitecaps as a 7, 6, maybe 5th seed if everything went right anyways. So I think based on their strong start, you can't rule them out of that, especially after what we saw from them last year on their run. So I still think the expectation is that they could scrape the playoffs, but at the same time, the Whitecaps' relationship with the fan base is fickly, because there's just the reality over the last few years, the Whitecaps haven't been all that good, and not only that, they haven't been that fun to watch. And then we finally, see them kind of find a level where they're not just good, but also fun to watch last year. People, if they're going to keep seeing the Whitecaps struggle like this, a lot of, you can already see it, not amongst everyone, but there are certain factions of the fan base where they're kind of going like, oh, looks like it's just the same old Whitecaps back, the cheap Whitecaps. They have no ambition. They're not playing. So I think there are always going to be those segments there, and that group will just grow louder and louder if the Whitecaps keep losing. But you look at the start to the year that they've had. I mean, two of their games against Eastern Conference opposition, a loss to LAFC away, a loss to Houston away. Nothing to be too disappointed about. I just think they need to start getting wins, because the schedule does no favors to them. I think it's SKC, it's Portland next, 2 tough home games. You got Montreal coming down the road. It's not going to get any easier for them, but the playoffs, I'd still say making that 7th seed is still a very realistic possibility.
All right now for the Vancouver Whitecaps, just 1 point for 4 games. That lands them at 26th on these power rankings. The reverse power rankings today on Twitter Spaces and wherever you listen to podcasts. Alexander, I appreciate you, man. And that run of Alex's ends with you. So you have the honor of being the final Alex. Yeah, man. Good luck over the course of this World Cup qualifying window. We just did extra time on that. And it was tough from a U.S. perspective, but it was fun from a Canadian perspective. On we go to number 25 in these power rankings, the Houston Dynamo. Doyle.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, 1-1 draw at home against Colorado Rapids. It was a little bit of a gift, but I can't imagine Paulo Nagamura is going to complain about that. So far for Houston this year, they got a win. That's that Vancouver game at home. They got the draw, and then they got a couple of losses at Sporting Kansas City. Excuse me, 2 draws. So it's even better than I even, RSL 0-0 to start the year. This is perfectly acceptable, I think, for Paulo Nagamura to start.
3 of the 4 at home, and they only have 1 win.
When you say it that way, it's less acceptable.
I mean, this is Houston, right? We know that they've never traditionally been road warriors. We know that over the past decade, really since Houston existed, they've often done their best work in the early part of the season. They've been able to come out the gates and get results, even when they haven't been a great team. It's a new coach. It's a new system. There's a bunch of new players. So, it's not the same team. So that is obviously a mitigating factor to almost, 100% mitigating. But also not really. Not really. This is a Houston team that, despite taking 5 points from 4 games, we still have them 25th in the power rankings because it doesn't look like the talent has been significantly upgraded. They weren't in this game hardly at all until that terrible late touch from William Yarbrough that gifted them a goal. And the guy that they brought in this offseason to change things around up top has not been doing the job. That's, of course, Sebastian Ferreira, the DP center forward from Paraguay. I mean, they do need to create more chances for him. That is unquestionable. But at the same time, like he had a wide open header. If you're watching on YouTube, you're about to see it. He had a wide open header from 6 yards out that he put off his shoulder and over the bar. And like, if you're the man on a team that's struggling, you need to figure out a way to put chances like this one away. So it doesn't feel like they're close to figuring this out and being a team that can do what the Whitecaps did last year and make a charge up the standings by playing fun, winning soccer. It doesn't feel like that with them.
The nice thing for the Dynamo is it's at Miami and then home against San Jose in the next 2 games.
Yeah.
So they've got an opportunity, and for the Dynamo, they've got to take those sorts of opportunities against quote-unquote softer competition to pick up points and to move up the table and to take advantage of what we know is a really good home field advantage in the heat in the summer and to be around and in competition when they get Hector Herrera, when they make some changes in the summer window. I mean, Thiago, I think, on loan from Brazil coming in, a young U22 winger, sort of a, hey, let's see how this goes. I know the Dynamo have some issues when it comes to, I think, the salary cap and fitting a large number of changes in. So they're sort of stuck with some of what they have and evaluating over the course of this year and trying to build for the future. But Pat Onstead seems to have done a really nice job so far. What is this team going to be when Ache gets in there, and how can Ache elevate them, in your opinion?
Yeah,
just looking question. At the way that they're constructed now.
Yeah, it's a good question because I think their best player has been Coco Carrasquilla.
Yeah.
And his loan ends in the summer. His loan ends in June, which is 2 weeks before Ache comes into play. I think you should try to have them both out there. I don't know if the Dynamo are going to be able to do that. So that's a massive question. If you have them both out there, do you need another ball winner behind them? Like Matias Vera is a decent player. He's not build your team around him good. But like Ache is not a pure ball winner. Never really was. Carrasquilla is more of a number 8 who likes to go forward. They probably need to be protected by a 6, but then you have to take Darwin Quintero out. And Darwin Quintero is the only creative element in this side. It's this roster needs work. There's a lot of like average or slightly above average players, but they're not the type whose skill sets sort of resonate and amplify each other. They're guys who kind of have overlapping skill sets and kind of take stuff off the plate that nobody else can then add on to it. And so it's like, it's not entirely surprising to see them struggle and be I don't want to say rudderless, but like not have a clear path after the first month of the season.
Early days for Paulo Nagamura, early days for Pat Onstad and co. They've made some big signings. They need Sebas Ferreira to come good, and they need Ache to make a big difference. We'll see about playoffs this year, but it seems like they're on a better path than they were before, 25th in these power rankings. And a lot of folks saying, hey, you did us real dirty down 3 spots after drawing against the Rapids at home with a late goal from a mistake from the goalkeeper in Colorado, William Yarborough. All right, on to number 24. The new boys, Charlotte FC. Lloyd Sam is here. Color commentator on those broadcasters, all around good dude. You guys were excited this weekend, Lloyd. Big first win, man.
I got a big smile on my face right now with that intro as well. And the new boys, what a great performance. I'm sure you guys caught the game. I don't even know where to start with it. Where you want me to
start with Swiderski, man. We're watching on YouTube right now the first goal from Swiderski. That little turn after 17 passes, the left foot. I mean, that's magic. That had to be so fun.
Let's think about that game first of all. Such a high pressure game. 0 points from 3 games. You're coming into that, and you know what the talk is going to be if you don't win that game. And Swiderski came. You know, the DP pressure. We all know what it's like in this league. The DPs need to carry a bit more of the load, and he came ready to do that. That first goal, the open out, wasn't really too much danger for New England, and then he just beams it into the corner after 6 minutes. That's exactly what we needed, you know, exactly what the team needed at that point. And then the performances, it was more than just Swiderski, but Swiderski was a 10 out of 10 in that game.
What have you seen from him so far? In training, in games? How good do you think he'll be?
He had to go back to Poland for 10 days. So it's already an expansion team, and he missed 10 days of training. So this took him a little bit more time to get his feet under him. And you see in this game, I've not really, when I speak to our recruitment team, they're not so surprised by what they saw. Honestly, I hadn't seen that because I haven't seen all the build-up and all his videos from beforehand. But the way he played in this game, you know, the optimism there is with him going into this Cincinnati game this weekend is now like, you know, you don't want to get overexcited yet. But if he plays similar to how he played in the last one, we got a big MLS player on our hands.
Let me ask you this. How much of this was him being able to play off sort of a big target man in Daniel Rios? Because previously when we've seen Swiderski, he'd been the guy who was the center forward. And obviously he could play a center forward. But to me, he looked very comfortable in sort of a freer role, able to drift off of Rios's movement, pick his spots, and not necessarily be the focal point of the attack.
Yeah, I think that helped him. I mean, some of these games, he's been so isolated and he's running around and he's an honest player. So sometimes I'm saying he's a bit too honest, the amount of running he does on his own after lost causes. With Daniel Rios up there, he's really excited to hold up the ball whenever the ball goes up there. And there was guys around him. With a link-up player, you need to have guys around him. And if you look at Swiderski, I would challenge you to look at every touch he had in the first 20 minutes. Like, forget like this second goal in the whole game. He played amazing. But there was just something about him. His link-up play, his speed of thought was so much quicker than pretty much anyone on that field. And as you said, I was even surprised. And I was like, wow. And honestly, I was with the recruitment team earlier today, and we just went through his videos again. And what you're saying is right, though. Daniel Rios being up there, I think that helped him. Guys just getting – there was something about the team this weekend. I think, you know, that they know where they are. You know, as players, when you got no points, you know where you are. You know what everybody's saying about you. So I think everybody was out to change that. And Karol Swiderski, I think he understands that more is expected of him as a DP.
So then if Swiderski, more is expected of him, absolutely true. But the way to get that is by pairing him up top in a 2 We know that Miguel Angel Ramirez has traditionally preferred playing out of a 4-3-3 or even a 4-2-3-1 with a single striker. Like, what are we going to see from this team going forward? How are they going to line up, essentially?
That's a good question. I'm only the color commentator. I mean, I'm with you guys. I would probably like to see him and Rios up there again. But Miguel, you never know what he's going to do. He's got his own mind, and judging from the tactics from the game against New England, you just got to trust him. You just got to trust that he's going to do what's best for the team. I know what I want to see. I want to see them two again. I want to see a run-it-back performance. It's going to be such an interesting game. I think originally this was meant to be like the wooden spoon game. But now if you look at it, it's two teams in form now where it could be a bit of a relevant game,
Lloyd's feeling it. Feeling it.
And Inter Miami is down a little bit further south saying, that's our spoon. We own that right now. You can't take that away from us. This is us, man. Charlotte, Cincinnati, Unimas Tudien, Twitter, and English on Saturday, by the way, at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, can you imagine, Charlotte gets this win, which definitely can get this win.
Oh, yeah.
The outlook is very different. We've got Josviak coming soon. We've got another DP slot. We've also got a couple guys out injured at the moment. I think after that win, for one, everybody's shoulders are a bit looser. And I mean everybody. I don't just mean the team. Even down to myself, Eric Krakauer in the booth, everyone. Like, we're walking around the office with smiles on our face this week. And, it took a few games coming, but the optimism is there. Let's hope the team turn up with that same energy.
Results change everything. Lloyd Sam talking to us about Charlotte FC. On the positive to end here, Lloyd, it's been a pleasure. We'll do this again wherever we do it, whether on extra time or otherwise. Tell me what it's like to be in those stadiums. You've played in a lot of MLS stadiums over the years. What's it like to be in Bank of America right now for these matches?
Oh, the first one where we broke the record, 75,000, that was unbelievable. I'm going to go before the stadium. The tailgate was just ridiculous. And I tweeted out, like, they know how to tailgate in the South. Like, I've never seen anything like that. I've been over here 10 years. Didn't see it really like that in New York, D.C., Miami. Like, here, that was a real tailgate. And then, now that, obviously, I'm not a player, I can enjoy some beers with the fans and stuff as well. So the fan base here is a special fan base. They've been crying out for something to really get excited about. And they just really want to let loose and have a party. And, I think the players are now giving them reasons to kind of, like, let go. And the first game was 75,000. The second game was only 30. I say only 30 in comparison. But the noise when that first goal went in from Swiderski, when he, top spin that ball into the corner, the roar from the crowd was unbelievable. And, commentating games, it's the most fun I've had on a broadcast, that game. It was truly an amazing day. We hit the city after, had some drinks, and just... I think that's all part and parcel of the vibe here. The whole party atmosphere. Get your 3 points and then let's go out and celebrate.
Sounds like we need to be coming down to Charlotte for one of these games to.
Can you guys come down?
Not to work. I don't even want to work now. Lloyd Sam's telling me I need to be in the parking lot. I need to be out afterwards. Forget work. I don't need to work. I need to drink a couple adult beverages, man.
Yeah, come to a home game. I think, like, even when it comes to the off the field stuff, I feel like this club is excelling on that. Selling out the stadium in that first game. We got the ticket team here. And they're just working, 9 till 6 every day, selling season tickets. I think when you come down and get a vibe of it, you'll be inspired.
All right, we'll see if Cincinnati's inspired. Lloyd, we appreciate you, man. Follow him on Twitter, Mr. Lloyd Sam, and listen to him, of course, in the broadcast booth with Charlotte FC. Up 3 spots to 24 are Charlotte. Appreciate you, Lloyd. All right, on to next up, Cincinnati, head-to-head. Here it is. Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern, Unimas Tudien. Pat Brennan's here from the Inquirer. Pat, how big a game is this for Cincinnati? This might be their first 3-game win streak in MLS. I think it is, right? It would be.
Well, it would be, yeah. And
Let's
I don't
not count them. Let's don't count those points before they get them, right?
No, I learned long ago covering this team not to get too far out over my skis when counting wins. But yeah, this is going to be a big litmus test for FC Cincinnati, and I think it will say something about if they are truly progressing in the way that we think and fans hope they have been over the last 3 weeks. I think everything you guys just talked about with Charlotte, totally valid. I think it's great that there's, an infusion of optimism there. But I think this is still probably a team in Charlotte that, the top half, maybe the top 2/3 of the Eastern Conference will reliably take points off them. So if FC Cincinnati is going to be a team that is well away from wooden spoon contention, I think this is still a game, even on the road, even with a couple personnel issues, that they need to seize on this opportunity and get these points.
Pat, in what ways are Cincinnati progressing? And obviously the big one is Brandon Vasquez is a competent center forward, which is a new concept in Cincinnati. But like beyond that, in what ways are they better this year than they have been the past 3?
That's a really good question. There's 2 examples I can give you to kind of typify what I think is different about this year's team, Matt. And one is just the Orlando match in general, where FC Cincinnati was besieged, and there were so many opportunities where they could have handed that match entirely back over to Orlando. And in a lot of ways, they still did. But they hang on, they grit it out, and they get 3 points against what most people think is going to be a pretty decent Orlando team. So that's one thing. And basically the theme I'm going with here is the mentality of this team. Completely different. There was another moment that I likened to the Orlando match. With about 15 minutes to go at the weekend against Miami, Brandon Vasquez draws a penalty. Lucho Acosta misses it. And again, it just felt like the same old script for FC Cincinnati. This is where they capitulate. This is where Miami takes 1 or all 3 points. And 4 minutes later, Ronald Matarrita and Vasquez combine on the 3rd goal to make it 3-1. And then the game's over. And then even after that, Matt, they still sprinted across the finish line, proverbially speaking, and finished it out with a bit of class. So there's just this, it sounds so cliche, but I'm seeing it every day at the training facility. I'm seeing it in these matches. There is a different mentality. Jeff Cameron likes to use the word ruthless. It has been ruthless from these guys. And, I don't have particularly lofty expectations for them. I think I'm pretty grounded in this 2-match winning streak that they have. But, if this team continues to build confidence, maybe they could go on a run, and maybe these matches, unlike in years past, could be of interest, not just locally, but nationally, throughout the Eastern Conference into, dare I suggest, August, September, even October,
Yeah, and look, Pat, I looked at last year's those months, and it's all losses. What was it? It was crazy. It was like 13 or 14 losses in a row to start the season. And when I see the celebration on the bench, or I see Pat Noonan, then I see Dom Kinnear, and I see Kenny Arena, and I'm like, okay, oh wow, the foundation is different. Of course, the mentality is different. It's not a chop and change in the front office and coaching staff every week. What have you seen from Pat so far? What have you heard from him? And from Chris Albright as well? It just seems like leadership on the soccer side has been so in flux from the very start that this club has never really got an opportunity to sort of settle itself and build. It's always had to be torn down so quickly afterwards.
Yeah, I think one thing that Chris started to do before Pat even got hired was, strip away some of the dead weight from last year's team. And obviously it's well documented. This team wasn't able to undertake a great deal of turnover, but some of the moves that Chris made bringing in, modest acquisitions like Alvis Powell, Ray Gaddis, kind of, eyebrow raisers in some respects, signings like that. And, the amount they paid for Junior Moreno's MLS rights. And so a modest amount of turnover in this roster. But I think there's something to be said for keeping a core group of solid professionals in this team. That group has come back and sprinkling in some of the new flavoring, guys like Dom Baji and Moreno, and Alvis Powell's played a big role early on this season. It's just looked professional and organized and fitter, and that was all Chris and Pat were willing to say when I was trying to write my season preview for this team. And I thought, geez, if you guys aren't going to put quantifiables to this, like they're not attaching any measurables to expectations for the season, I thought that was pretty damning. And I thought, geez, are we in for another a fourth straight wooden spoon here? But the expectations have been raised in the locker room. Like I said, the mentality is different, and Chris and Pat are articulating a clear vision for what they want and what they need out of each individual player. I think communication has been a big key here, and that sounds, again,
sounds basic, but it is,
basic things. And now there's a clear understanding for each player of what his job is, and here we sit going into match week number 5. And they're a respectable 2-2-0 in the league.
Look, professional, organized, respectable, all words that we haven't previously said much about Cincinnati. We are now. Big thanks to Pat Brennan. Go follow his work over at the Inquirer. Follow him at Pat Brennan ENQ over on Twitter. Appreciate your time, Pat.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, let's keep it running. From Cincinnati at 23, we go to DC at 22. Doyle. The Taxi Fountas news is good news for them this week to get the DP in early from Vienna. I don't know what to say about DC right now. Do you have any strong feelings or takes about what's going on in the nation's capital?
Yeah, I don't. It's been kind of a muddle, and part of it is this, pretty weird schedule that they've had at the start of the year where they're getting to play a lot of the teams that I think we all agree. Like, I know we just talked nice about Cincinnati, but Cincinnati is still one of the 10 worst teams in the league. So they've had a pretty easy schedule. They're doing it while dealing with not just injuries and absences, but a pretty decent amount of offseason roster turnover. They have a new, target forward in Estrada, who's played and scored, but hasn't played well and is maybe no longer the first choice already. It's all been a little bit weird. DC last year, weird meant good. They were Red Bulls-ish in that they were able to turn games that were kind of like freak shows in their own favor. That hasn't happened as consistently this year. It's just how it is, and it's tough to put a finger on it after such a short amount of time.
One of the things that I wonder about is between Estrada, as in Flores, even Ola at times. How do they get the most out of their attacking pieces? Like, it's all well and good to turn the game into just chaos merchant zone, and maybe there'll be chances that come from that. But like Flores didn't look good in that.
No,
honestly, he hasn't looked good in any system with them, any scenario really. Estrada on loan, Ecuador International. He'll probably be going to a World Cup. How do you get the most out of him? Ola Kamara has been on the trade block. I mean, Julian Gressel has been their like consistent attacking piece. Now they have Smith on the other side to provide more attacking width and drive from the fullback position. I just wonder what the balance is for them. But so far, 2 wins, 2 losses. Maybe not fair to have them in 22nd and dropping 4 spots after losing at Toronto. But here they are, DC United, after 4 weeks. All right, let's keep it rolling here, and let's get to Toronto at 21. Winners against DC. Michael Singh is with us. What's up, Michael? How's it going, man?
What's up, Wiebe? I was hearing, I think it was Lloyd talking about Charlotte earlier, and I had the privilege, I guess, of covering a couple Charlotte games for MLS Soccer, and I'm just trying to will into existence Vibes FC. That environment, the swagger they play with, so much fun. So I just wanted to get that shout, and I heard Lloyd talking about that environment.
What's the vibe in Toronto in the Bob Bradley era? Like a month in so far, how would you define that vibe?
Honestly, the best way I can sort of describe it is there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's something that we weren't able to say last year with this Toronto FC team, with a couple of different coaches at the helm, and it really didn't feel like it was getting any better. But with this Toronto team, with 19 players now departing the club from last year's roster, it really feels like a turning of the page. And you're starting to see what Bob Bradley, his ideas, you're starting to see that come into fruition with the squad. Even though they're not getting, perhaps some of the results that they wanted, you can see that they're playing way better football. I saw a wild stat that TFC have held 60% possession in 2 of their 4 games so far. All of last season, they only did that 3 times. So you're seeing that identity shift. And of course, the way that I phrase it is that they're playing with house money. This Toronto FC team is going to look completely different in the summer when Lorenzo Insigne and a bunch of other bodies come over, and they have an abundance of allocation money to play with. They've traded a lot of pieces, shedded a lot of salaries, like I mentioned. So it's a fun time this year right now for Toronto FC.
One of the ways they will probably look different is when Insigne comes over. It's either a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. They played this game out of what looked to me, I feel comfortable calling it more of a 3-5-2, though you could probably call it a 3-4-2-1 if you want to. But either way, it seemed to give that midfield trio of Michael Bradley, Jonathan Osorio, and Alejandro Pozuelo a little more cover. Asked a little bit less of them defensively. Is it reasonable to expect that they can go out in a 4-3-3, which is how they played the first couple of weeks of the season, and where they gave up a lot of the ball and they gave up a lot of midfield? Is it reasonable to expect that these 3 guys can go out there in a modern 4-3-3 and get the job done and be enough of a defensive presence and do enough ball winning to make that formation work and create that spot on the field for Insigne to walk into?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Doyle. And I would say at this time, it's not, to be completely honest with you, based on what we've seen. Michael Bradley's getting up there in age. Jonathan Osorio and Pozuelo, they're not necessarily the fastest players on the park. So a lot of TFC's chances they've given up have actually been in transition. And that's kind of bang on to your point there, where that midfield trio is sometimes susceptible to being caught there on the other side of the ball. So honestly, no. But with that being said, when Insigne comes in, he changes the game, because sometimes the best defense is that hold-up play for your team. And I think Insigne is going to be spectacular just keeping possession. Right now, it's young Jaden Nelson or Luca Petrasso there on the left wing. And I think it's a little bit unreasonable to expect those guys at that age to sort of hold up the ball the way you need someone up top to do that. So right now, I don't think it is. Could that be the case in the summer when Insigne comes in here? Potentially, Doyle.
We see Jonathan Osorio in the shot here. I think he's out of contract here at the end of this year. Am I right or am I wrong about that? Michael, do you know? Yeah, yeah, man. I'm just like throwing it out there. It's like, do I have the right feeling? Secretly certainly read it from you. What happens with Jonathan Osorio? Do you think his long-term future is in Toronto?
Yeah, that's a great question, and like, he was very vocal at the end of last season about chasing his ambitions, of course, and that is to eventually play in Europe. I mean, he's getting up there in age now, so what opportunities come his way? That's the question. It has to be the right fit. It has to be a step up. You're not just going to go play in Europe for the sake of saying you're going to go play in Europe. The grass may be greener here at Toronto FC at the end of the day, and I think that's sort of the options that he has to weigh. And when you look at someone like Richie Larea, who is now at Nottingham Forest, and he's not even able to crack the side yet, I wonder if that makes Jonathan Osorio question whether making that move over to Europe is sort of the right thing for his career at this point. He's got a good thing going in Toronto. I mean, he scored his 50th goal over the weekend, and he came out and said he wants to score 50 more for the club. So I know contract discussions haven't begun with him in terms of an extension, but it's something that both parties are going to have to sit down and sort of try and figure out, because I think Jonathan Ozura could be that rare breed in MLS that is sort of the one club type of guy.
A lifer, one club man. Hoist that jersey to the rafters once it's all said and
1,000%.
done.
Pride of Brampton, baby.
You know, Evie.
God, Kalen Carr told us. You guys already knew. Enjoy your relaxing next 8 or so days, Michael, while we all just lose our collective minds. Go follow him on Twitter for TFC and Canada coverage. Michael Singh 94. You can see it right there on the screen on YouTube, or you can check it out on Twitter live, or go look him up if you're listening on demand on MLS Today podcast channel. Thank you for your time, Michael. We appreciate you.
Of course. Cheers, boys.
All right, Ali Trost, you're up, and God knows we didn't expect to be talking to you, Ali, at least not in this reverse show. We figured it'd be the normal power ranking show, giving Sporting Kansas City's pass, but here they are holding tight at 20, losers 3-1 to the Chicago Fire. How do you feel about this ranking? Is this fair so far?
Based on the results so far, yeah, I'd say it's fair. I mean, you don't get extra points for playing hard or doing some things right. Unfortunately, it's the final score line that indicates where you ultimately sit in the standing. So I think, yeah, this is fair for now, but I feel fairly confident, and so do the guys here in the locker room, just in having conversations that things are going to turn around. And unfortunately, injuries hit really early, and it's forced them to make a lot of changes, not just in personnel, but in style of play as well. So don't be surprised when, you have me on the Power Ranking show in the next month or two here in the season.
Kansas City hosting Salt Lake this weekend at 7 p.m. Eastern on Tudia, and also Twitter English Audio. It's a back-to-back between Charlotte, Cincinnati, and Kansas City and Salt Lake. What's not working right now, Ali? What's gone wrong, so to speak?
Well, I guess I would start with, the injuries, right? I think it's hard when you go through an entire preseason preparing with a certain starting 11, and that really didn't change. I was in Arizona for about 10 days, and the starting lineup for the starters in training and most of the preseason matches were the same guys, and then you're missing 4 of them already, just in this last game, and others who have been in and out even before then, with Kyrie Shelton, Daniel Shalvey, Johnny Russell, and then Uri Rosell. So I think that throws a huge wrench in things for Sporting, especially when you look at all 3 guys up top. It's not like their injuries were really spread out throughout the field. Sporting's system is so solidified here within the organization. They go out and find players to fill roles specifically designed to play the 4-3-3 style of play that they like to do here, and that is not just with the first team, but trickles all the way down through the entire Sporting KC organization. So I think losing all 3 of those guys up top forced them to not only bring new guys into the fold with Marinos Giannis and Nikola Vujnovic, who are brand new to the United States of America, to MLS, to Kansas City. They've been getting more minutes, and then they of course ran out the 3-5-2, 4-5, 5-4-1, whatever you want to call the formation against Chicago. So I think injuries have been the thing that's been going wrong the most for Sporting Kansas City up to this point. That and self-inflicted errors. If you look at the Atlanta game, all 3 goals from Atlanta came from Sporting Kansas City mistakes. Even the Chicago game, to an extent, a couple of goals that Tim Nelia would typically save, and I think he'd tell you the same thing. And they just came at really inopportune times for Sporting Kansas City, because I think they really did have some really good moments in the game, some really good momentum building, and then just unfortunately we're chasing that entire game, always looking for that next goal, that equalizer, and they just couldn't seem to get it. So I think it was an unfortunate result for them, and I don't think the scoreline necessarily justified the way that they played. They held Chicago to 0.22 expected goals in that first half, and then in the second half, if you take out the penalty, I think you're under 1 expected goal there. So unfortunate, but the group is still confident, and no one's hanging their heads at all just yet. And if anything, the positive here is that you've got a bunch of guys, a bunch of depth pieces getting some valuable minutes and valuable experience, and that is something that the team certainly lacked last year.
Ali, let me ask you this. For all the injuries up top, taking the headlines and the concerns in the defense and Tim Melia having a bad game. Sporting Kansas City is still a team without a defensive midfielder. For years, it was Ilie's job. Gianluca Busio got some time there in 2020 and 21. Obviously did well with it. He's moved on. Ori Russell was brought in. Ori Russell's been a nice player in the past, but he doesn't seem like a starting caliber defensive midfielder for a team that has ambitions towards silverware. Remy Voltaire has come in and tried to put a Band-Aid on it, but it's not really his position. Jose Mari walked himself right out of Sporting Kansas City with that performance against Atlanta. Is there an answer for this position, or is this a place where we should expect to see Sporting go shopping, either this window, which is still open for another month and a half, or over the summer?
I think a lot of that's going to depend on Ori Rosell's recovery. I mean, he was not back in training today. I guess I should plug in the good news here for Sporting fans is that Daniel Shalhoub, Kyrie, and Johnny Russell all back in training today. No timeline yet still on Gadi Kinda. Alan Polito, of course, likely out for the rest of the season, although that hasn't officially been, there hasn't been an official stamp on that. As far as whether they put him on the season-ending injury list, just unlikely, of course, that he'll be playing for the remainder of the season. But as far as whether or not Sporting's going to shop for a defensive midfielder, I don't think so. I mean, the unfortunate thing is that Ori Rosell was fantastic in preseason. And I know, in talking to him, that he was feeling the best that he's felt in his career. So for him to go down as early as he did in the season with a hamstring injury, which, as you guys know, can be just, as far as timeline to return, it can be a couple of weeks to an entire season that a player is dealing with that. But he was looking fantastic in preseason and was certainly considered to be the answer to that position with the technical staff, and seemed to kind of fit what they were looking for there, and even brought beyond what Ilie Sanchez could bring to that role. And of course, similar style of play, both coming from the Barcelona academy. They, have that ability to distribute and play the ball and all of those similarities. But what Ori was bringing and showing a lot in preseason was just this physical presence that I think at times they lacked with Ilie. And look, Ilie Sanchez is one of my favorite players of all time, even better person to cover. But I think Ori was a step up for them, or at least perceived to be, for what they were able to get him for in that position. And with Remy Voltaire, the interesting thing is, Peter Vermees will talk a lot, when he's asked, hey, is he an 8? Is he a 6? Peter will tell you he thinks he's more of an 8-6, but every time I've asked Remy this question, he sees himself as more of a 6-8. So, I mean, it's not an unnatural position for Remy Voltaire, but I think as the season goes on, we'll have a better idea. But again, I think it's going to depend a lot on Ori Rosell's recovery, because as it stands currently, I think they see Ori and Remy being their two options at defensive midfielder. And I'd be shocked if they went out to try and find a third guy there, of course, unless Ori is going to be out for a considerable amount of time. And then, in the 8 and 10 role, you've got Roger Espinoza, Felipe Hernandez, Cam Duke, and Gadi Kinda eventually coming back. So they've got a lot of depth in those two positions. Again, I would be shocked if they go out and fight and, try to fortify that 6th position. But again, Ori Rosell's health status is going to tell us a lot.
A lot of talk about injuries right now with Sporting Kansas City. They got to figure that out, and quick. They play on Saturday, hosting RSL. That's a rivalry of the past on Tudien English on Twitter. Go follow Ali Trost. Ali Trost on Twitter, covering Sporting Kansas City like nobody else does. Ali, I appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's finish it off with Montreal, who we think could climb this, but so far are dead last in the Eastern Conference with a really tough goal differential. Sort of a collapse. Not sort of. Definitely a collapse in Atlanta this weekend, Doyle. And look, they've been stretched. They've had CCL to deal with as well, and some disappointment there for them. What have you seen so far in year 2 of Wilfried Nancy and this Montreal team?
Great flashes. Georgi Mihailovic has leveled up. Victor Wanyama has, I think he played his best month of soccer since he's come to MLS almost 2 years ago now. Breakout performance this weekend from Ishmael Kone, that landed him with John Herdman's Canadian national team for this round of qualifiers, which is huge. There's a lot to be happy with. but we've seen for more than a decade now just how hard it is to compete in both MLS and CONCACAF Champions League. And for a team that is well constructed, but not Sounders or NYCFC level deep, and who are missing a couple of key players in spots, Sam Piet, Mason Toye, guys who I think we probably expected to be starters entering this year. It was just too much. And so they melted down in the second half of this game. But that's exactly what happened to all four CONCACAF Champions League teams this week. Well, it's not true. NYCFC melted down in the first half, and Philly took it to them and ripped them apart. But Seattle were played off the pitch in the second half of their game. The Revs obviously just completely fell apart against Charlotte in the second half. And the same thing happened to Montreal, even up a man and even up 2 goals. I am not particularly worried about this team. I think that they'll come out the other side of the international break. They'll be rested. They'll be a little bit healthier, hopefully a lot healthier. I'd like to see Mason Toye out there in particular. And they no longer have to juggle the insane travel and the multiple competitions and the dead legs. And I think they'll start picking up points. I still think this is a playoff team in the Eastern Conference.
Tough start so far. Tough game in this one. Still should have the 3 points. The free kick got to be saved by Sebastian Breza. But CCL to deal with. Maybe they can recover and push forward after 4 weeks. That's expectation, at least in Montreal. And that is your reverse power rankings. From 28 to 19, we switched it up, and we're thinking about switching it up even more going forward this year. And maybe even just drawing names out of a hat or just choosing the teams from the 28 that we think are the most interesting that need to be talked about so we don't repeat things every week on Top 10. If you have any ideas about that, hit us up, Andrew_Wiebe on Twitter or at Matt Doyle 76. If you're listening live right now on Twitter Spaces, awesome. Appreciate you being here. We are live at 2 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday. This is also on demand on both YouTube and the MLS Today podcast feed, so check us out there. Huge thanks to all our guests, as always. It's the best part about this show for us, and I'm sure you as listeners as well. Alex Windley, Alex Morgan, Alexander Gange Ruzik, Lloyd Sam, Pat Brennan, Michael Singh, Ali Trost. Great crew this week. Doyle, that's it. I almost had it.
You almost had it. It was really close. It was such a good effort.
I had it. You know, my you can see on YouTube my writing is terrible, and so I was like, oh my god, I can't even read my own handwriting on this one. That's my cop out. We're out of here on these power rankings. Enjoy the World Cup qualifiers, everybody. I think next week's a break for us because there's no games. We'll be back the week after.